And if I'm not mistaken, one of the companies producing it, Final Cut for Real, if I'm not mistaken, had also produced Joshua Oppenheimer's The Act of Killing. So it's really incredibly high-profile producers making a documentary in Bengali. It's really wonderful things happening in this country. As we're on the border, I'd like to discuss a little bit widen our scope for South Asian films. I'm going to talk about a Bangladeshi film called Television by Mustafa Sarwar Farooqi. Absolutely brilliant film, which actually looks at Islamic fundamentalism, but really is a vitriolic satire, vitriolic. It's, I think, very sophisticated because I think when you have extreme Islamic fundamentalism, it's, or any fundamentalism, you tend to see the terrible effects of it or be empathetic to the victims and so on. That's usually the mode it goes. But it really takes a level of sophistication, be a little bit distant and make fun of it in a very delicate way, but very acidic, I should say. So the film is actually about how, in a small village, the chairman of the village, the boss man, he bans television because he thinks, his interpretation is that in Islam, images are haram, that images are sin. It's sinful to look at images, as they often extend to art as well. So he bans television, so it's very funny because all the Muslims flock to the Hindu homes who don't have this ban. And then there's this very funny sequence with these Saas Bahu TV serials going on. Turn it towards this window, so all the Muslims are waiting at this window. They see half of it. No, now we want to see it, so it turns the television to that window because the other neighbors see it. So it's always mocking and really making fun of what is interpreted as Islam. And I think it's wonderfully funny because what it looks at is the spaces of what is allowed and not allowed in the most personal and delicate way. So there is this protagonist who's in love with a young girl. And it's interesting to see an image of the girlfriend, who's Islamic, is way more gadget savvy than her loutish boyfriend. He's a bit of a useless oaf. And she's the one, tell him, because she wants to speak to him and he doesn't even have a mobile phone. She has to call on dad's mobile phone and talk goose things. So she said, why don't you get Skype? So she's the one who's got Skype and says, or Skype, and persuades him to have it so they can have some privacy. So it's always negotiating these personal spaces within what's allowed and not allowed. And then so it's also talking of censorship, of things that are allowed and not. So like there's a censor sitting with a newspaper, and when these hot babes, in Times of India or DNA or all these papers on the front page. So he's busy sticking white bits of squares of paper covering them. And then he's sort of checking them out again before he seals them properly. And then I think what's really marvelous about the film, because it's actually talking of images being haram, it actually sets its love story directly on course, in a collision course, but in a really wonderful twist to it. Because so in a very throwaway scene, what's lovely is it makes it points so elliptically and delicately. So there's a very ordinary scene where this girl is going with her mother in the bazaar and goes to this pokey, those yellow Xerox pokey shop that do Xeroxing and telephone and fax and everything. And she says, yeah, hold my bag 1 minute, I'm going to get a passport photo, because they, all these multiple use shops. So when she goes to get a passport photo into that studio, which of course is drawn with a black cloth, a curtain, so actually that turns out to be her place for a rendezvous with her lover. So it's very interesting because that's where you'd make an image, and she uses that space to actually push the boundaries and create in a totally public space, create her own little private meeting ground. So that's it's doing a lot of that. It's playing with a lot of that stuff. And then in the end, it's really wonderful because so the chairman finally goes to get to Hajj, and that's like the big dream of his life. And there's this big farewell. The whole village gives him, wow, he's so lucky to go on Hajj. Then he comes to Dhaka, because it's in an obscure village they live. When he comes to Dhaka, he finds that the travel agent who had booked his ticket is totally conned him, and there's no ticket to Dhaka, no ticket to go on Hajj. He's totally conned him and disappeared with his money. So now this guy can't go back because he got such a grand farewell. He can't go back and say, I didn't go on Hajj. So because he's leaving in some seedy hotel till he can make a plan what to do next. And through the neighbor's window in the hotel, the door's a little bit ajar, and there's live telecast of Hajj. All the prayers being said, people going around, etc. So that's how he sees, that's how he goes on Hajj. And his whole thing of being against television was that images are haram. And why is it haram? Because, it's fiction, it's not fact. You can show fiction on television, right? You're running away with your imagination. You can do terrible things if you let your imagination to go forward. And exactly, that's through his imagination is how he goes on Hajj. So it's just really very beautiful. Can we take a look at television, please?